for coming out. I'm Jen Degenhardt, and I'm here with my illustrious partner,
Theresa Marrama.
Okay. And we're so happy to be with you this evening, even though it's not Terry's hour of the day. It's totally my hour. So we would like to tell you a little bit more about the comprehensible readers and how to use them with your classes. And just this afternoon, or maybe it was this morning, I'm facilitating a course through Idioma Consulting on using these comprehensible readers with the novice learners. And I asked the students to create a reflection about what they learned in the course. And surprisingly, they learned something, which was great. And this one teacher who had never before used comprehensible novels with her classes, was getting her feet wet, and she sent me the greatest reflection, which I thought would be very helpful to you. And so it's not coming from me. This is from a student, Tanya Akome. And she said that she realized that the traditional lessons she was planning were not as effective as she wanted them to be, especially post-COVID. And she said that she, when using the readers for this course and reading them herself, she found herself not only paying attention to the characters and the plot, but also to the vocabulary that was carefully selected and the frequent repetition of words and important phrases. In analyzing the text, she realized that her classes lacked that repetition. And that is one of the tenets of CI, is a lot of repetition. And furthermore, it's not her whole reflection, but reading a novel seems like a good way to provide this repetition of language. Furthermore, for someone like her, who is in the beginning stages of using CI, novels are a packet of comprehensible language that can be used right away. And Theresa is going to show you how she starts out with her novel, Leo et Anton. Sorry for the pronunciation, and just how easy it is. And I am not a French teacher, but I know enough French to help out my best friend's son in his French classes. And we read the novel together, and he was able to get it, and I was able to get it, and I was able to speak enough French with him. So I'm telling you, it's right out of the gate sort of thing. So do you want to start, Madame?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, great.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Theresa Marrama, and I am a French teacher in Northern New York. I live about 30 minutes from the Canadian border. I also author many CI readers, and what Jen and I will basically go over today in our presentation is ways to use a comprehensible reader as a class novel. And I believe myself and Jen will talk about how we use our readers, specifically give you examples from a chapter of both of our books. My book being Leo et Anton, a French reader, and for level 1 students. And Jen's, what is the title of your book? El Viaje?
El viaje difícil. Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, here I go, Jen.
Okay.
I got it. All right. So of course, using the comprehensible readers, ensures the fact that the students are getting repeated exposure to the language. And what's really nice about the comprehensible readers is, like Jen was just stating, from feedback in her, is it online class?
It was an online course, yeah.
You get that repeated exposure, that repetition is naturally woven into our novels. So the students, if they don't understand a word through the second chapter of the book, they'll know it by the end of the book, as they're written specifically with repetition in mind. So reading, super important for the students, in any language, of course, and one of the best ways to provide input. So I'll jump right in and just kind of go through how I teach a chapter of my novel. I use this novel with my French 7th graders every year. I normally start teaching this novel at week 10. So it's usually after we split into quarters. We have 4 quarters in our school year. So by week 10, my students open this novel and will read it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks and spend time on it. And they get so much vocabulary from it. So much good verb use. They're able to speak in complete sentences when we talk about the book, the characters in the book. So I've seen amazing things happen with such a very, very simple, easy reader that has a very cute plot, I think. So
it is cute. It's really cute.
Yeah, it's a book about friendship and facing one's fears and, not being brave about things people should normally try to be brave about. And of course, if you look at the cover of the novel, it's a cat and a mouse. So the basis of the story is the mouse is not afraid of anything, and he's the smallest, and the cat is terrified of mice. So the cat is unique in that he's not like other cats. And they end up forming a beautiful friendship in the end, although one's afraid of mice and the other one is looking for a friend. So before I start teaching the novel, I try to make important connections to the themes in the book with my students. I always try to grab specific vocabulary from the book that is repeated, that they need to basically understand. So as they're reading chapter by chapter, those vocabulary words that are repeated throughout don't cause them any stress, or they struggle to have to keep looking things up in the dictionary in the back of the book. So what I will do is, I'm just going to kind of go through exactly how I teach this. So the first thing I do when the students come in the first day is I do what's called a map chat. And this book takes place in Quebec, in Canada. And it actually hits home for me because I'm only 30 minutes from the border. And the students know that we're, geographically very close to another country. So what I like to do is ask basic questions. So I'll have like a picture of this on my board, and I'll ask, now they're 7th grade students. They've had French for about 8 or 9 weeks at this point. So some things I don't have a problem asking in English just to get their, the wheels moving and thinking about the topic. So I always start, who knows where Canada is located? I won't put the map up yet. Who's ever been to Canada? Does anyone have any family that lives in Canada? So just kind of get some questions circulating, getting them thinking about it. And then I'll have the map up on the board, or it'll appear. And then I basically just start talking it out. Okay, where is Canada located to the United States? Is it to the south of the United States, or is it to the north of the United States? Who can tell me Quebec? Is it a state in Canada? How is Canada divided? Is it divided into states? What is it divided into? So you just kind of get some geographical discussion in there. And then what I start to do, I usually always put basic questions that I ask in the target language, and then underneath I will define it in English for the students so that they're not struggling and they shut down immediately. They don't understand what the question is that I'm asking. They can hear it, they read it on the board, and it's also scripted in English for them as well. So I question this until I feel the class is all kind of getting engaged and part of the conversation. Students always pipe up and start saying things. I've been to Quebec. My dad drives over to Quebec. He works there. He has to go there once a month. So you get to know your students. The class you can kind of watch come alive. And everybody, by the end of the discussion, now this might last 3 days. This might last 2 days. I kind of just take for the feel of the class and engage how long I spend on this. But this I've spent 2-3 days on. I know, Jen, you're a big map person.
I do maps. I map all the time. I teach college level now, and I find that students are not as aware, spatially or geographically, where anything is located. And I think that that's really important to have them, keep that in mind. I mean, Quebec is not Honolulu. I mean, it's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The Pacific islands in the Pacific and Quebec, you know, and you know, languages are different, people are different, and I think the more geography that we can cover, even in the target language, is going to benefit our students as world citizens. So that I have maps up almost all the time until same in my classes too, until I know they get it. And believe me, they need all the help they can get with cardinal direction.
Well, and it teaches the cardinal directions, and from this point on, they never forget them. It's instilled in them. I always find it interesting because as close as we live to Canada, where we are, there are so many students who have never been to Canada. It's and then you have students who will bring in pictures and becomes a whole nother thing. So it's not only is it a great way to teach geography in the target language, but it's a wonderful way to get involved, to get talking with your students and get to know more about them. So it just connects you, and there's like a central theme in the classroom. So once that's done, and I feel that we've exhausted map chat, I always introduce the vocabulary, and I will do what's called PQA. For those of you who don't know, it's just personalized questions and answers with the specific vocabulary that I want to focus on.
Hold on a second. Somebody had a question for you. Maybe you're going to address that now.
Okay.
How do you present the vocabulary without being so teacher directed? With many CI lessons, I see too many teachers lecturing, directing, and students zoning out.
I get the kids involved. I don't just tell them the vocabulary. And I think that we might answer that in this next slide.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's a great question. So basically decide what vocabulary is essential for the students to understand for the chapter. Because this is such a beginner novel, it's very repetitive. So this isn't specific vocabulary just for chapter 1. This is vocabulary that is repeated throughout the entire book. So the ones that I picked were veut être, courageux, habite, aime courir, après, a peur, and comme les autres chats, which you can see wants to be brave, lives, etc. So what I do, so that it's not just me lecturing the students, I guess, to answer your question, is I come up with questions that will make the vocabulary connect to the students. And by that, I mean, I'll show you, that's my next thing, making connections through PQA. So has is a verb that's very much woven into the story, a basic verb has. And of course, one of the main characters is a cat. So I always start with, okay, who in class has a cat? Qui en classe a un chat? And the kids will raise their hand. I might write the names of the students on the board. I might just put a un chat, has a cat, in one column, n'a pas de chat in another column. And then the kids are kind of watching me. I'm tallying, but I'm including them in the conversation. They're really creating the conversation, the discussion in the target language. I try to stay very much focused and don't go out of bounds, I guess, with the vocab that I use in French, so that they're not feeling like they don't understand. Some other questions I ask with this specific vocab, qu'est-ce que tu veux être? So one of the major things in the book, Léo et Anton, is the cat wants to be brave. So I always ask the students, what's one thing you want to be? Students have a hard time coming up. Sometimes they always think like, oh, they want to be famous or they want to be rich. But those aren't really the kind of things I'm asking for. They're fine answers, but I always give them something to work from. Sometimes they just can't come up on their own, like with an idea. So if I provide examples, they either use one of my examples or they kind of, they'll bounce off those examples and come up with something all on their own. Some examples, oh, tu veux être grande, célèbre, accompli. And then again, I might write on the board as I do this and tally up how many people want to be brave, who in here thinks they're brave. And again, the conversation keeps going, but they're understanding it all because we're having it back and forth. It's about them. I'm making it about them. It's not just me providing information.
What I do too is to make sure that students are paying attention, is sort of ask questions about the other students in the class. Oh, does Paula have a cat?
Yes.
What's Paul, what's Paula's cat's name, or in things like that. And they get excited about, even at the college level, get excited about understanding the question and being able to answer. And even if they're not vocalizing the answer, if they say, oh, Stephen.
Right. They still understood your question. Yes.
Like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were there any other questions, Jen?
No, not right now. Okay. Somebody gave you a compliment though, but I'm not telling you that right now.
Okay. Où est-ce que tu habites is another one, because it takes place. I personalize this question because we all live near Canada. So I always say, where do you live? And it takes place in a forest in Canada, the story. So I'm always asking, okay, who lives near a forest? Is it a big forest? Do you walk in the forest? So I personalize it that way. The kids kind of learn a little bit about each other. Oh, wait, you live there too? I didn't know you lived in my town. Like, oh, you're not far from me. So they kind of make connections amongst each other, and it just creates a really good like family vibe in the classroom. De quoi est-ce que tu as peur? This is a big one because it's the central theme in the book. What are you afraid of? So I usually, for this one, I spend a couple days, 2 or 3 days, and I have them draw out what they're afraid of. Put their name on a little index card, they draw it out, and I do what's called card talk. So I pick up the cards and I make a big deal. If it's like a spider, and I'll ask them questions in the target language. Oh, he's afraid of spiders. Is anybody else afraid of spiders? You afraid of big brown spiders? Or little spiders? So there's a lot that's woven into the connection piece, the personal questions and answers. So after I PQA and the vocabulary has been repeated and used and repeated by myself, the students, at this point, I feel the students have a really, really good grasp on what all of those terms mean. So I will follow up with some different ideas. Sometimes I connect outside resources to our discussions. By that, I mean, for example, here I put what TV show, movie features a famous cat or a mouse. And sometimes I have classes who can give me lists that are long, and other classes that are like, oh, I don't really know. And then one kid gives an example and they just all start going. So again, they get really excited about this stuff. It's really basic. Oops, sorry guys. But again, keeps the flow of the language going, and some of this is in English. That's okay. They're still being prepped for the book, but they haven't read the book yet, and they're getting all the language they're going to read in the book. So when they open that first page and start reading, they're not going to have any issues. There's no issues with comprehension. Student images. Sometimes I'll use pictures submitted from students that might get some discussion on different animals going. Another big thing I ask is, what animal, when you think of an animal, which animal do you feel is the bravest animal? And, you get kids who will say, oh, the lion. And other kids, I don't know, dogs are pretty brave. My dog's pretty brave. So we learn different animal names. I read them in French on the board. I'll make a slideshow and we'll talk about it the next day. And I'll put the animals' names in French and then in English. So there's so many different things that you can connect with it. It just depends on how long you want to spend with it. If your students are staying in the target language, like you're able to stay in the target language and they're understanding you, keep going with whatever you're doing. You'll get the vibe when it's going stale.
Whenever the students are involved with the target language and they are animated, it's a win.
It is, and you just got to milk it for what it's worth.
Absolutely.
Other things I'll ask, what does it mean to be brave? So I have them, brainstorm. Sometimes I'll put them in groups. What does your group come up with for a list? What did your group come up with for a list? What does it mean to be brave? And then we talk about it in English. I might put some stuff in French so they get to see some of the French words. What are you afraid of that most are not? That's kind of with the PQA question I mentioned earlier. And then, is friendship important to you? And why? So, I get to know a little bit about my students, a little more about my students. Students get to know a little bit more about each other. And we've made connections with the target language and with one another as human beings, which I think is really the most important. And we all are kind of respecting one another in the midst of it all. So, any questions, Jen?
No, I would have chimed in, but if you want me to, I totally agree with you there that, connecting on a human level, especially now post-pandemic, getting students to actually pay attention to each other is a great idea. I found that at the college level, my own particular students, in my experience, I wouldn't speak for everybody, that that students are having a little bit more trouble connecting with each other, and to anything you can do to bring that down, that effective filter where they're not freaking out about looking foolish or sounding foolish in the target language, because face it, nobody at that age from middle school to high school wants to look foolish. I have conquered that fear clearly. And so it's just a good idea to get people understanding that we're all in this together.
Well, and I think by this approach, the students don't complain about reading. And the kids don't, like, I have kids, we read on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I do a class novel. And if I switch it up, it's like I upset their entire world. They're like, wait, we're reading today, right? It's Thursday. And I'm like, no, actually, what? Like they become very routined. And I think by teaching it in this manner, it's not you just coming in and reading the chapter to the kids, giving them comprehension questions. It's they're reading, but you're making it magical, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You said something that I wanted to comment on, and of course now I can't remember what it was. It was only like 15 seconds ago, but reading is also a wonderful habit that we want to encourage in our students in any language. And oh, that's what it was. Students love predictability. They will tell you that they don't, but we're presenting to you today something that you can take and rinse and repeat, do it every single chapter. Just because you're bored doesn't mean that they are necessarily.
Absolutely.
And they like that. Okay, well today, right, I don't always like when we're reading, but I know it's reading, I know what's coming up. I mean, I think especially in this post-pandemic world, or I'm being a little optimistic there, but providing that routine, I think is humane.
Really. Well, and I think as humans, our brains are wired for routine.
Yeah. Oh, so somebody asked you about 50-50 languages to start. I guess like 50. Oh, something we need to mute, please. Can everybody mute? Because I can't see who y'all are. And I don't really want to hear my voice.
I got it. It's taken care of. We're good.
Okay.
I don't want to hear my voice.
50-50?
Yeah, 50-50 and not a raffle.
I want to win the 50-50. 50-50 using the language, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my 7th graders, there's English in my classroom at times. Once they've read the novel, we can discuss the novel and do things with the novel in the entire target language, entirely in French. But until 50-50, I'm okay with to start, because some of these students really are coming in with very little French background. So yeah, 50-50, and I'm totally fine with that, because the outcome at the end when we're finished reading is amazing. Because we can do it 100% in the target language. So yes, I start off usually 50-50. So moving on, I will do a lot. I'm a very visual person. I love pictures. So I always try to use some pictures from the chapter. There aren't many pictures in this book, is one picture per chapter, but I'll use pictures from the chapter related to what might happen. I might picture talk it. Oh, class, is there a cat in this picture? Is it a big cat?
Grow.
Where is the cat?
Grow.
Is there a big cat? Where is the cat? Is the cat by himself? Is he alone? What else do we see? So they might say, oh, I see trees, and I'll put in French les arbres. Oh, what else do you see? Oh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 birds in the sky. Oh, il y a 5 oiseaux dans le ciel. So I'll write it out, and they're getting French, but they're participating. They feel comfortable. They're not stressed because they feel like they have to be able to produce the language perfectly or at all. So pictures, love pictures. And then we begin by reading the chapter, the fun stuff. But to be honest, we spend more time pre-reading with pre-reading activities, post-reading activities than we do during reading activities. One, because the chapters are very, very short, which you'll see. So I do this in all different ways. Usually with my 7th graders, because they're so new to the language, I read chapter by chapter. Every time we read a chapter, I will read it aloud to them while they read in their books. So they're hearing correct pronunciation. I'll also play the audio recording by Alice Ale of Lewe Anton if I just need a break. So they're still hearing the language, but they're reading. While reading, I do things where I stop and will ask a question about what just happened. Usually in French, I'll compare that specific thing with maybe someone in class to connect the characters to my students. And then on the bottom here, I'm going to get to some different ways to get them to reread, because the trick is to get them to keep getting more exposure to the chapter. So just so you can see, this is chapter 1. It's very short. So I'll give you a moment just to kind of look at it. So we read the chapter, and then next in the presentation, my final part will be just some tips and tricks on how to get your students to reread the chapter. So they're, remember, the more time their eyes are on those words and the structures in sentence format, they're acquiring the language. They're getting all those repetitions.
You have a question,
Mm-hmm.
which I hope you can answer, because I can't.
Oh no.
Moises says, how would you assess guided reading effectiveness? I know what all those words mean, but I don't know what they mean together. I'm telling you, yeah, they take anybody at the college level. You just need a pulse.
When you say assess, I guess
Okay.
I need to know.
Okay, so then we got another question. It's a follow-up, same one.
Okay.
For instance, thank God. Okay, how focused are they when following your reading?
Well, you know your students. I know exactly what students are focused for most of the time while we read, and the students who are looking at the fly on the window. But
go ahead. You do your but and I'll give mine.
But if they're not focused while I'm reading, the next few slides are going to show you they will get the reading, because the tricks and tips to get them to reread the chapter again and again and again.
Okay, that was it. There wasn't any follow-up to that.
Okay.
I just told everybody that we're not that academic.
Sometimes I will stop and I pause when I scan the room, and the students know why I'm pausing in the middle of a sentence, because obviously kids aren't looking at their book. But if I did that every single time, I would never finish a chapter.
And then we have another question from Christina that says, would you ask reading comprehension questions at the end or during?
Both, whenever.
Yeah.
Yep. If I feel the sentence needs to, if it's something, okay, in this first sentence here, it says, I want to be more brave. I want to be more brave or braver.
Well, I don't know, whatever. See, we're not English.
I'm thinking French. I mean, so I might stop there based on our previous discussions and ask one of the students who said that they didn't feel they were, maybe he said he was really brave or she was really brave. And I might stop and say to that student, do you say you're really brave, but do you want to be even braver? So it connects the student to what we just talked about in the characters trait. So I ask questions in the middle of reading, at the end of a sentence in a chapter, at the end of the chapter. I kind of just do it when I feel it fits. And some tricks after you read to get them to reread. So one big thing I do with my 7th graders, because they're, so new to the language, I tell them, okay, we've read chapter 1. It's all about Leo, le chat. Think about Leo. What do we know about Leo? So I give them some time to look through their novels. I might do it independently in a group, and they just write down. Now I tell them, if you're not comfortable writing in French, write it in English. If you want to look at the words in the book and just pick out the words that are about Leo, adjectives, write them in French on the diagram. Some kids will literally copy sentences, and I can tell that they know those are all about Leo. Of course, the whole chapter 1's about Leo, but you're getting them to reread. You're just tricking them to reread.
It's all a trick.
It's all a trick. Another thing I'll do with this is I will ask them to find all the cognates. In chapter 1, are there any cognates, words that look like English words that have the same meaning? What are they? So that's another thing I do. Running dictation, some of you may have heard of this, but basically picking some important sentences from the chapter you're working on. And I don't have to read all this. You guys, I think, are going to get a copy of the slideshow, right?
Well, they're going to get a link, and then they can go into it.
They can go in and check it all out. But this is a great activity to get your kids up and moving, rereading the sentences from the chapter, and kind of making it a competition/game. But
I assess, and sometimes maybe I sometimes ask questions that are completely false, like Leo is a dog.
Yes.
Just to check that, the more absurd, the better. I mean, and I always ask, oh, and so character is going to rob a bank, right? I mean, something that's totally out of.
Yeah, and then they're paying attention because they're like, what?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Another post-reading tip: sentence strips, chapter review. Gives students a set of sentences from the chapter. You can put them in groups. They're rereading the sentences, so essentially they're rereading the chapter, and you're secretly having them read again, and they have to decide again if the sentences are true or false. Like Jen said, you could have some very absurd sentence strips in there, so
sure,
they're paying attention. A gallery walk. I am notorious for gallery walks. I use this this concept for everything. I'm actually doing this across the board. I teach grades 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I have a very busy workload. And I use gallery walks all the time. For this, illustrate 3 details about Leo on a large sheet of paper. So you have your students create this. And then you as the teacher, or you could have your students based on, how well they're doing with the language, maybe put a sentence or a word in French underneath the illustrations, and you post their work around the room, and each student walks around, each student walks around the room to look at each other's posters, and they're reading. You could even give them the sentences that you want them to kind of draw out, and they could tape their sentence. So you're actually having them reread the sentences again from the chapter. Wow, I just gave myself a whole nother idea. So I do that stuff all the time, and I don't write it down half the time. So I have these amazing ideas, and then I'm like, oh, what was that thing I wanted to do? So I hope those tips and tricks can help you guys and you pull something from it. But that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Now I have to go.
Now it's you, Jen.
How am I going to follow that up? How am I going to follow that up? Okay, and not keep everybody here until night. Okay. Can you turn to the next slide so I know what I'm talking about, please? Yeah, thanks, because you're in charge of that part. Okay. So I've always taught at high school or or college. So dealing with students who are a little bit older, I wanted to get students involved in themes that I think they should know about and know more about. And so that's what's included in a lot of my novels. And this particular book, El Viaje Difícil, happens to do with undocumented immigration from Guatemala. And I know this is a really hot button topic, depending on where you live, even more so. So I always say to the students from the outset, we're going to talk about this story as a human story and nothing else, politics aside. I mean, at the college level, actually, we can get into a little bit more of the politics, but definitely, high school kids, I don't trust them to have a measured conversation. Oh, you don't hear it? You don't hear? Is everybody? I'm still here. It's still going on. Okay, thanks for, okay, sorry about that. I have, adult onset ADD and middle age, so that's a problem. Okay, so can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Oh, boop, boop, boo-doo. And I do a lot of pre-reading too. I do a lot of pre-reading activities because I need to know where the students are, how much do they know? And most of my students have had a background in Spanish, and they're repeating in college because it's a requirement, and it's just a requirement. So I also have a lot of heritage speakers, so I have to deal with brand new students and students who speak Spanish in the home. And so I put them in groups to do this, and I use the T-chart all the time. What do you know? Lo que sé, lo que quiero saber. What do I want to know? Or what do you think you know? So either way. And I have them work in groups so they can sort of feed off each other. And if there's a student who knows more Spanish, I tell them, copy down what they write and make sure you know what it says. And so, I'm big on copying and practically abject plagiarism of my own work, because that's how they will get used to writing in sentence structure, because it's so simple. And after we do that, and maybe there's not so much filled up in the what I know, and they don't really know what they should want to know yet, then I give them this article on Guatemala. It's very simple, and it's but the reading is a little bit harder than the book. So we go through it, and I say, don't worry about it. You get what you can from that. And since there's a lot of data and numbers and stuff like that, they can usually figure it out. And also because there's a lot of cognates in Spanish. So we go with that. I'm like, oh, what else do you see? What else do you see? And my trick is call on the ones first that don't have any idea what in the heck is going on. Give them a fighting chance to participate, and then you can go to the ooh kids, because they know everything already, and sort of building that rapport, and that's a lot of fun. Okay, yes, and for you Frenchies, there is the translated and adapted by my wonderful partner, Un voyage difficile in French. So it talks about immigration from Haiti. Oh, that I said that in Spanish. Well, that didn't really work out. Whatever. Okay. What do we got? What do we got on the next slide? I have no idea. I don't memorize these things. And I also like to give them some images to look at, because people might look different than they do, or where people are emigrating from might look different than they do. So I'd like to show them a little video just to give a broad view of what we might be talking about. I mean, they've already purchased the book, and some of them have practically already read it, but you can do this with high school kids. Draw it out as much as possible, because it doesn't really matter. The reading is sort of a bonus. You just want to get them involved in the conversation, just like Theresa talked about. Just go on and on and on and on and on. As long as they're engaged, it's a win.
And I think, can I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the part where, when you're teaching a reader, I think you have to go in with the mindset that it's not obviously it's about the book. I mean, you're reading a book, but you need to go into it and not just to finish the book. I don't know how I want to word it, but there's so much more to teaching a novel than just finishing the book.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It's a means to an end. it's the stuff that you get to work with, but then you get to go from here and there and everywhere and talk
It's
about
the experience. It's like the experience, not just the story, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't make up whatever you want. It's all
Okay.
good. It's all good. I'm okay. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes, we can.
All right. But listen, this is very informal.
Sorry.
Informal, and me with the maps, and I love the maps, and I'll spend days on. I mean, I don't have that many days to go because we only meet twice a week. So, but I could spend a whole half a class period, and my class periods are an hour and 45 minutes on just the map. I mean, you need to know, and I don't know a lot, and that's the other thing I want to tell you. You don't have to know everything. It's master of the obvious. Oh, right. Oh, el Golfo de Mexico. Where is that? ¿Dónde está? Oh, it's en el sur de los Estados Unidos, al este de Mexico. And I usually screw it up. East, west, I'm middle-aged, whatever. I see if they're paying attention. We talk about, the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles and the bodies of water and islands and refreshing what they learned about a peninsula back in the 3rd grade. I mean, that's all important stuff to still know, because I think it's important stuff to know, because you never know when you're going to be on Jeopardy. Okay. You just never know. So, and I do it a lot. I do it because I find that students, even at the college level, which surprised me, they don't know where places are. They don't have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important. Like, and I always, I go back to, the 3 cultures. I said, oh, by the way, in the Caribbean, there's 3 cultures, from Europe and from Africa and the indigenous. And then we're talking about Guatemala. I said, well, there's indigenous people in Guatemala too. And you get 3 choices. What are the ancient civilizations? And they all know those because they memorized them in the 2nd grade or the 5th grade. The Inca, the Maya, and the Aztec. And I said, well, who lived where? And it's good to know. You don't have to be an expert, but I think it's good to have that idea. All right, we can move on to the next thing. I'll go on forever about this. This is my hour. I love this hour of the day. I'm on target. So talking about Guatemala in particular, it's and geography, not just countries and capitals. In fact, I would dispense with memorizing the map necessarily, but pointing it out each time. Oh, having a labeled map up there so they can see it, but having memorized it. I mean, what good is that? I mean, I do know all of the countries and the capitals, but that's not that important. Knowing about the people and what they, how they live, where they're living, that's much more important. And that Guatemala has a large indigenous population. And I try to relate that back to the United States and how differently the indigenous live here in our country than they do in Guatemala. And the 21 different indigenous languages that are still spoken there. And I review why Spanish is spoken. That's very important. I am a fervent believer of reminding students about the conquistadores and the colonizadores, not because they were better than, but that this region would have been a whole lot different if we all didn't show up. Okay, so I think that's important for students to remember. And I don't say it disparagingly. I'm just saying, you need to keep that in mind. Okay, I know it's not your fault, not mine either. I mean, first Gulf War, yeah, maybe my fault, but this stuff, not so much. And climate, especially with climate change, and climate change is causing a lot of migration throughout the world. What might the climate be like in Guatemala at that particular latitude and longitude, and the topography? I mean, those are good things to know. I had a student at college tell me that it was hot. It was hotter at the top of the mountain, and and I didn't make fun, but I said, well, think about this. It's up It might be closer to the sun, but not necessarily going to be hotter. And I don't know what I came up with. It was pretty good at the time, and it made sense. So you don't have to be an expert, but giving them educational background so they can make a guess. There's a reason why why we don't grow sugar, or why sugar's not grown in Quebec or in northern New York. What is that? Oh, okay, let's think about that. And the effects of the climate on the people. I mean, why are large masses of people from the northern triangle of Central America migrating to the United States? Well, a lot of it has to do with climate change. So getting them to think and to use the language. I don't even care if they're wrong, because many times they bring up stuff. I'm like, I don't know the answer. And I just tell them, like, oh, I don't know. Well, let's look it up. Let's figure this out together. And it shows them too that not only do you not have to be perfect in the language, you don't have to be perfect at all. It's completely unattainable, this perfection thing. I'm ready for the next thing. Hope you're all keeping track. I'm on a roll here. I feel like I had some coffee or something.
I was trying to look in the chat. Are you still managing the chat?
No, I'm not managing the chat. Okay. I can't see both things. Okay. Oh, my students get Elsa says, my students get interested in comparing salaries from different countries. Yes, anything.
Yeah, that's right? Interesting.
So, and then we go talking about immigration in general. And surprisingly, even with the heritage speakers that I have in my courses, they have not engaged in conversation with their parents as to why they might have been born here. And I just say, well, maybe you should ask. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. I mean, and that's kind of cool. Every story is really cool, and that's what I try to highlight here. And you'll have these editable T-charts if you want, because I put a link to them. We can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
And then I have them, especially because these are older students, but you could do it with younger students too, and just have them guesstimate. Well, why would people want to emigrate from? And I do discuss those two terms: emigrate from, immigrate to. And and especially because they're cognates, it's really cool. And they get into groups and they'll talk about it. Say, oh, okay, well, what do you think? Why would people come here? Have you talked to the person who is working on your lawn or building your house, or perhaps cleaning your home? Ask people when you go out, well, why did you come? Just be curious, because I think we lack that here in the United States, is a curiosity about others and people who may be different from ourselves. And I don't think there's any bad question as long as it comes from a place of love and concern and curiosity in the positive way. And then I get to ask them about themselves and their families, and I love that. So I know everybody by the end of the second week, because it's so important. I'm more fascinated by their stories than I am about the book I want to give them that I wrote. And if you're not sure what to include with this, collaborate with the social studies teacher. They must know something. Let's just assume that they do. Okay. Next. And sometimes I do that in English, and sometimes or I'll have them call out in English, and sometimes in Spanish. And then I add a little listening, and this is hard. I always tell them, I always give them stuff that's harder than the book first. So then they have a little freak out, and then by the time we get to the book, to listening to the book, or reading the book, they're like, oh, this is a piece of cake. So I sort of get them to crash first, and then build them back up, but not in a bad way. And usually students can pick out a couple of words, and there's more students who can get more of it, so we put that on the board and stuff like that. So just adding a little bit of each of the skills as we go along. I'm all done with this one too.
Okay, you are on a roll.
I am on a roll, and I wrote rom instead of from. Oh well. Again, I'm not perfect. And then I go through the vocabulary that they might have. I provide them with a workbook of sorts with a vocabulary list. Some of them have come from non-CI classrooms and teaching styles, and they like to have a vocabulary list. I mean, I can think of nothing worse myself, but it allows them to feel more comfortable. And I tell them specifically, if you know what the word means, for example, color, the word color, it's the same word. I said, don't write it down. Don't write it down just because it makes you feel better. Don't write it down. Just don't bother. So we talk about food. I always include food because that's always what I'm doing when I'm not teaching is eating. And the time of day, and jobs and professions, things like that. So I do some more PQA with that stuff too. And just getting them ready for what may happen in the chapter. My students do the reading at home because we don't have, no, you can go to the next one. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Because we don't have enough time in class to be doing this little hand-holding reading. But with the glossary, with a complete glossary at the back of the book, they find it very manageable to get through the chapter. And I know they're spending the time, well, most of them anyway, are spending the time and really trying to figure out what's going on. And then we get back in the next class and I say, well, did you understand everything? No. So don't worry about what's going on. And they were able to tell me exactly what goes on in the chapter.
Jen.
Yes.
I'm interrupting. Could this book work in middle school?
Yes. Yes. And I think people have used it in middle school. It's, there's nothing untoward. I don't think there's anything, not for younger students. I mean, I don't write like that. I don't write like blood and guts and gore. I do point out though that, some of the migrants take La Bestia, which is the train that travels through Mexico. And I do point out that some people do fall from the train to their deaths. And because I think that's important, people die on the way, and I'm not shy. I will talk about anything in class, and not just because I teach at the college level. So that would be up to you to decide what would be appropriate for your school district. But I think it's appropriate and necessary.
Is the level of writing of the book? Someone asked, is this book written at the novice level?
Oh yes, novice level. Listen, who wrote it? I mean, novice level all the way. And a lot of repetition and a lot of cognates. I love to use if I can find a cognate, I will use that word when I'm writing, because that's what it's all about. Listen, I couldn't speak Spanish if I didn't know cognates. And my little French that I have without those either. So yes, it is at the level, I would say, for maybe for 8th graders because of the content, and maybe not right at the beginning of the year, just getting them involved. But here you go, here it is.
We're at 7:55. I just wanted
okay, we're getting it. Okay, so hurry up and shut up. I got it. So here it is, chapter 1. And there are links also to chapters or chapter 1, pages 3 to 4 and 5 to 6. We have given you this, the content of our books, so you'll try it if you want to, because everybody needs something to do in June. Okay. And nobody cares if you assess it or not. Okay. I'm giving you the permission. Try it. Don't assess it. See if you like it. If you like it, say, hey, department chairperson, I need this for next year, or pick another book. I mean, this is how simple it is. Okay. I also included for you the vocabulary, the comprehension questions, and some writing prompts. So you can take a look at those. So it's all there. I mean, just go, add water or whatever. I mean, show up, I guess, would be your add water. Okay, go ahead. More? Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I just lost it. Can you recommend other novice level books for 7th and 8th graders?
Oh, we sure can.
We have a bunch. We can recommend
have a bunch.
But we'll
Okay. And we have in our books too, you know, where they cover some themes that are a little meatier, where you could actually have a discussion, you know, at 8th grade level, or even 7th grade, 6th grade too, you know your students best. But yes, we will put that, oh yes, and somebody said la leçon du chocolat. Yes. We have some really good level 1 books. I mean, yeah, okay. Patting myself on the back there. And Derek Alums, thank you so much. Check out Digilingua. We have all of our books on there in digital format with audio, and there's a free trial involved, but there you could at least check out all the books, read through them, parse through them yourselves, and see what's appropriate for you and your students. And they're already leveled in there, so we don't even have to come, Terry and I don't have to come up with the titles right now.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, Digilingua, that's okay. And is that it? How would you do this middle school level with 9-week courses? Oh, well, Christina, that's a great question. And maybe that's something you and I can talk about to give another little chitty chatty about. Terry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm reading through some of the comments.
Okay, I'm like,
about all of this.
Ignoring me? Is she ignoring me? Okay. Looking for novels written in the passé composé and imparfait. Okay. Yep. Okay. So yeah, we do have a lot of stuff, and for some of my simpler novels, I have put them in Spanish in the past tense, because I can do Spanish. The French, not so good at. Yeah, passé composé, I don't have any idea. And l'imparfait, I mean, I kind of get them, but I wouldn't have the right past participle. So yeah, we're done. We're done.
No, I want to say
I'm done.
This is great. It would be awesome to have another one on the post reading of the entire novel. I think they mean like another presentation on just post reading a novel. I'm just writing it down as an idea.
Okay.
That would actually be a really good idea. I like that a lot.
Okay. Great idea.
Well, good, because we're all, we love to talk, clearly. So
and then we might need a third one that's just for questions and answers.
Yes.
Okay, right. Sorry.
I'm like reading through the post. I can't.
I know. Sorry. Thank you all for showing up.
Yes, thank you.
I always have a great time, and if Terry and I can get it on our schedules, maybe we'll send it out for like a half-hour Q&A if you want to do that, Chuck, because I feel like people have more stuff to say
and to ask. Yeah,
definitely.
That's what I meant. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I get a little nervous.
All right. Well, everybody, yeah, if they decide to do that, then I will email everybody. I'll let you know, and you can register for that, and we'll put that together. But in the meantime, you can still head over to the Facebook page. The video is going to be there, and you can leave your questions as comments right there, and they can get answered there.
Okay, great. And thank you, Derek, for the lovely comment. That's so nice. Yeah, we're personality plus. You just never know what you're going to get.
Okay. I know, but you guys are so fun. Thanks so much for coming out
we love being here.
Yeah, we love being here. Yeah. And you will get a copy of the recording. Don't you worry. Chuck is the best.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Really
I will make sure everybody gets a recording.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. And ask your questions, and I'll try to be on top of that.
Yes, I will as well. I'll try to, but in the morning.
Yeah,
in the morning. Yeah.
In the morning. But I'm done teaching. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to rub it in. Okay, okay. So thank you so much, and thank you, Chuck, for hosting us this evening. And
you're very welcome.
Seeing everybody again soon.
Yeah, everybody have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thanks so much for coming out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Flangoo.com